Hey there, hello friends. This is Sanjay Singh, your sales coach. In today's LinkedIn Live, we are going to talk about how do you develop listening skills for yourself. And yes, friends, I belong to the domain of sales, so I'm talking to all of you out there as salespeople at various levels in your hierarchy. How important is listening for a salesperson? And how do you develop your listening skills are the two things that I'm going to touch in today's live session. So, first things first, what exactly is listening? I mean, when you are listening, do I mean that you're not talking? Well, not really. When you are listening, do I mean to say that you just keep mum and allow the other person to talk? Not really. So, when I talk about listening, your mouth is less active, your brain is more active. So continuously, the CPU, the central processing unit of your brain, is processing things, is capturing things, processing things, evaluating things, and trying to understand what exactly is the context in which the conversation is happening and how to respond. So a listener does not react, he responds. And to be able to respond, you need to collate facts, you need to understand the context, you need to do need analysis of what is happening, you need to have an overview and then consciously respond, right? So this exactly is what we are going to take up in today's program. So as we move forward, how do you develop your listening skills is what we're going to talk about. Now, there are various forms of listening, right? You could be receiving, you could be understanding, you could be remembering, right? You could be evaluating, or you could be taking a feedback. Now, if you feel that receiving, understanding, remembering, evaluating, and feedback are the five different things which you do when you are listening to someone, surely trying to build an answer is not one of these five options. So you see what happens when you're talking to someone. The default reaction is, how am I going to answer this person? So even while the other person is talking, we are not listening 100% to him or her. Our mind has started building a response. As our mind has started building an answer, which should be a cogent, impactful answer to the person. Now, in the process of trying to keep your mind busy in preparing an answer to the discussion that is happening, you reduce the power of your mind to do any of these five things. So, when your mind is busy in trying to build an answer, you stop receiving. You kind of inhibit understanding, right? Your brain power reduces, so you're not able to remember what are the facts being told by the other person. Your evaluation, the evaluating strength of your mind decreases, and feedback is the last thing that comes to your mind, because what have you done? You have you have kept your mind busy in trying to build a strong answer to the person with whom you're trying to converse. Now, am I saying that giving a good answer is not important? Of course, it is important. But the difference starts here. To be able to give a good answer to the person that you're talking to, you have to receive him fully. You have to understand the person fully. You have to remember things, whatever the person is talking, and you also have to do a quick on the spot evaluation before you give your response as a feedback. You see, so five forms of listening, and generally, I have seen generally our mind is busy in preparing the feedback or the response or the answer, and in the process we do not do receiving, understanding, remembering, and evaluating. Now, having said that, and I'm sure you appreciate the importance of that, you have to ask yourself this question: that are you a good listener? Right? Are you a good listener? Now, if you're a good listener, then you should be receiving well, you should be understanding well, you should be remembering things well, evaluating and feedback. Great. Let me have your response in the chat box on this. Let me take it forward. So, as I take it forward, now there are 8 tips. I want to share 8 tips for good listening skills for you. My tip number 1 is stay focused on the communication so that nothing is missed. You see, you have to be very focused. You have to be very focused in receiving the person, in receiving the packets of communication from the person you're talking to, rather than doing anything else, right? Tip number 2 is emotions. You see, a communication is a bundle. There are certain words which are said, there are certain words which are not said, there are certain words which are not said, but you can see that in the body language, you can see that in the expression, you can see that in the tonality of the voice. So emotions, right? Then the third tip is questions. You see, many a times while conversing or while communicating, while trying to listen to a person, there are certain loose ends which you're not able to connect the dots well. That's the moment you can ask small questions. uh, Ask the questions not as an authority, but ask the question from a point of being inquisitive. Ask the question from a point of trying to know rather than trying to ask or trying to tell. All right. So that's tip number 3, your questioning skills. And then tip number 4, don't interrupt. Many a times when you are trying to talk to a person, there's a tendency to interrupt, especially when you feel that you know the right answer, or especially when you feel that the person who is talking is giving wrong facts. It hurts your ego and you try to interrupt, you try to put the facts right. No, it doesn't. That's not a good idea. Allow him to download, allow the person to download, listen properly to the download. You will get an opportunity to respond. Don't worry, you will get an opportunity to respond. There is no rule which says that the person who has said first wins a game. No, and it's not a game really, right? You will get an opportunity to respond, but don't interrupt. Allow the person to download fully. Okay. My tip number 5 is don't preempt, because a lot of times, you know, there are black spots in your mind. You have preconceived stories in your mind about certain facts and situations, about certain people. Now, these preconceived notions and stories which goes on in your mind forces you to preempt decisions, forces you to preempt your response. Don't do that, because if you preempt your response, you're actually creating a barrier of communication, and surely you cannot listen well. Okay. My sixth point is try to recap things, especially when the communication is long and you are listening to someone beyond 1 minute or beyond 2 minutes. It's important to recap. Now, whether you recap after every 1 minute, after every 2 minutes, depends on the level at which you're discussing, and also depends on the time frame that you are involved in this discussion. But it's a good habit to recap things so that the perspective doesn't change, so that we don't beat around the bush, and the listening or the communication happens along one grid, right? Very good idea. Point number 7, to take written notes. Don't have so much belief on your brain. Don't try to tax your brain, even if you have a very powerful brain. Don't try to tax your brain by trying to remember too many things. Good idea to take written notes during a communication or during a listening sphere. Eighth point, of course, avoid judgments, friends, because judgments or things which are going on in your mind, past experiences, past feelings about certain persons or certain situations or certain organization, again becomes a barrier in listening. So all in all, 8 points. If you follow these 8 points, I'm sure it will help you develop your listening skills better. So focus on the communication, listen to the emotions, which is rather listen to the unsaid words, use your questioning skills to clear the dots and connect them. Do not interrupt while someone is downloading, do not preempt, recap at some periodicity, take written notes, and avoid judgments. Fantastic, friends. Now, if you have done all this, and if you now understand that how you could probably take your listening skills to the next level, let us understand that ensure that the other person is talking. Now, you can see those bulb which gives you a four-step process. Ensure that the other person is talking. Understand, assimilate, and ascertain before you respond. So, in the step one, when you ensure that the other person is talking, there are times when the other person stops talking. And if the other person stops talking, how do you listen? So, in such scenarios, you got to ask a question, or you got to do some prodding so that the conversation starts. It's only when the conversation starts that you can listen, isn't it? So in sales, especially, many a times we have to prod, we have to coax, we have to cajole, we have to ask questions to the customer so that he starts talking. Once he starts talking, I'm listening. What am I doing? I'm assimilating and ascertaining before I respond, right? And listen to the unsaid words. We already discussed that. Listen to what the voice, body language, we have discussed that. Fantastic. Fantastic there. Let me take you to the next slide. A good listener. So what happens? I mean, I'm just trying to understand what are the traits, or rather, what happens when you are a good listener. Number one, you never jump to answer even if you know the answer. You will wait for your turn. Don't jump to your answers. Number two, you probe to understand the gap between the heart and the mind. You probe. Questioning skills, ask small questions to probe. Engages and creates a conversation. So, as a salesperson, when you're listening, you're always interested in creating a sales conversation. You're not interested in proving a point. You're not interested in winning the bout. You're interested in creating a sales conversation, right? And take notes. We discussed this. So, when you're a good listener, you do these four things. Just because you have outreached, as a salesperson, we outreach to someone, we meet someone. So many a times we feel that just because I have outreached all the way, I need to be heard. No, you have outreached because you want to listen to someone and give him a solution as a salesperson, right? So outreach and listen. Now, typically listeners are very solution centric. Anyone who's a listener has a huge solution centricity. So they will listen, and when they respond, you always come up with solution. You don't express to impress someone, right? Your job is to find solution. You do that very well when you're a listener. You listen with an object to communicate. When you listen with an objective to give and not to take, you become a very strong communicator. you know uh, some of us call it gratitude, some of us call it givers gain. Finally, I'm listening because I want to contribute. I'm listening because I want to add. I'm listening because I want to give. I'm not listening because I want to take. I'm not listening because I want to grab. I'm not listening because I want to win. Now you see that's the difference. So listen with an objective to contribute. Don't listen with an objective to grab. And listeners, everyone who loves to communicate with people who listen. So you become a very good friend of everyone when you're a good listener. And when you talk less, you actually expose less, right? So that's again very important. What are the dividends of a great listener? If you are a good listener, you become famous, you become rich, you become happy, and you become a great networker. You can look at famous, rich, happy people around you, and you will find that all of them are great listeners, right? So you want to become famous, isn't it? You want to become rich and happy. You want to become a good networker. You got to understand the power of a good listener. So friends, let us master the art of listening as the first step to name, fame, and money. This is the first step that will get you name, fame, and money. And always ask yourself this question: that are you a good listener? right? So that brings me to an end of today's session. Let me quickly summarize. It's important, friends, to ask yourself, are you a good listener? And I'm sure all of you are good listeners, but then there is never an end. Can I become a better listener? None of us, including me, none of us are 100 out of 100 as far as listening skills are concerned, right? You have to be God, you have to be a Krishna to be a great listener, right? So none of us are 100 on 100 on listening skills. All of us are trying to improve our listening skills, right? Now, as long as you understand the science behind listening, as long as you understand the art behind listening, I'm sure you'll make a great listener. Towards the end, I only want to say that listen because you want to contribute. You want to contribute to the discussion, you want to contribute to the problem being discussed, you want to provide a solution, you want to give out of virtue of your knowledge, your experience, your skill, your workmanship. It could be anything, but you are listening to someone because you want to give. You're not listening to someone because you want to take. I mean, that will give a paradigm shift in the way you listen, because you got to listen actively, you got to assimilate things actively, and then consciously respond. You have heard of golden words. So a good listener always has golden words because he speaks less. Every word spoken by a good listener is equivalent to its weight in gold, and the whole world salutes such people. And naturally, such people are rich, famous, and happy. I'm sure you also want to become rich, famous, and happy. I hope this video cast will help you in becoming a good listener. Please do not forget to post your comments on this video, especially for those of you who could not get time to participate live in it. Based on your comments, we will keep on coming back with our live programs on LinkedIn. For the moment, take good care of yourself and always be proud of the fact that you chose sales as your career, because sales is the only profession which can give you name, fame, and money at a speed which no other profession can. Take good care. Bye bye.